Never mind.
Never mind.
Never
Never
mind.
mind.
Never
Never
mind.
mind
Never
the noise.
mind the noise.
The noise.
Never mind the noise.
Hello.
Hi.
What are we saying? Hello or hi?
Hello, and welcome to this very special concert. My name is Evan, and I am the former president of Nevermind the Noise. Today, you're going to hear pieces composed by members of Nevermind the Noise and performed by the ensemble Hypercube. Before we start, we want to give a huge thanks to Hypercube for sticking with us. This concert was initially scheduled in spring of 2020, but then something happened, and I'm sure you know what that something is, and unfortunately it got delayed by about a year. So again, huge thanks to them for sticking with us, and here's actually a short message from them.
Hi everybody, we're Hypercube. I'm Andrea Lodge and I play the piano.
I'm Erin Rogers and I play saxophone.
I'm Jay Source. I play guitar, and on Yaz's piece, I play banjo.
My name is Chris Graham, and I'm the percussionist in Hypercube.
We're really excited about this project with NYU's Nevermind the Noise composers. It's been a project that's been a long time in the making. We started our collaboration with these composers last year, I think around February, so almost a year ago. Unfortunately, it didn't happen last spring because of the pandemic, but we were really happy that we got to work this out in the fall. Our process was really different. We collaborated with the composers via Zoom to talk about ideas, processes, and instruments. And then Hypercube potted together to start rehearsing, and we then met with the composers on Zoom to start talking about different techniques within the pieces and musical details. So we're really excited that this concert is going to be presented for all of you.
We had a really great time working with the pieces, and one of the things to note is how different each piece was. With Yaz's piece, we had a chance to blend colors sort of in a symbiotic and ensemble-like way. Some of the colors coming out of this piece are just beautiful. And of course, it all starts with this really nifty banjo riff that you'll hear is unmistakable. Michael's piece, a beautiful piece that just sort of moves through themes. But one of the most interesting things I dealt with Michael's is just singing through the horn, and so you're going to hear, such interesting blends with the vocals and the rest of the ensemble. And then Kirsten's piece with a real rock spirit. One of the neat things was the way that she played with different compound meters and just putting together different timings. So it's got a great gritty rock feel, but is unpredictable and exciting.
In Evan's piece, we sort of jump from one genre to another. So we might be playing in almost like a heavy metal style in one phrase, and then in the next phrase it's a funk riff, and then in the next phrase it's a sort of a Debussy impressionist feel, and it's almost like a jump cut stylistically throughout the piece. And in Alex's piece, there's this great sort of post-minimalist energy to it, really excellent use of textures and some really great electric guitar effects, and some sort of layering of parts that really pulls the whole ensemble together in a great sonic texture.
Yeah, I mean, to add to what everyone has been talking about, each piece had a lot of variety written in them. And for the percussion part, it was extra fun and challenging having to play drum set on two of the pieces, and then your more traditional contemporary percussion instruments on the other three pieces. I thought there was a nice use of the pitched percussion instruments such as the vibraphone and the crotales, and also just a nice rhythmic mix and variety of musical styles with having to play drum set on the other two pieces. So overall, it was personally a lot of fun and challenging, and I think as a quartet, we really enjoyed ourselves learning and performing and working with the composers on each of their pieces. So with that said, we hope that you all enjoy this live stream performance, and thank you very much for watching.
So today we are joined by all the composers of the pieces on the program, and before each piece there'll be a short word from the composer about everything.
So the first piece on tonight's concert is 2,000 Times I've Screamed by Kirsten Ewart. So Kirsten, there's drum set involved in your piece, and there's really great harmonic moments between the guitar and piano. So I was wondering if there was any sort of popular music that influenced this piece, like if there's any sort of rock or emo music that you're listening to at the time that maybe went into your composition process.
Yeah, it's like one of those things. I grew up listening to sort of emo rock and sort of the fallout of the grunge, 90s grunge music in the early 2000s. So I love sort of those rock rhythms, those like heavy beats, and the repetition that you find in a lot of that music from that time. I've always been like a big fan of sort of the emo bands of the 2000s. An example would be like My Chemical Romance. I also liked more punk groups such as Blink-182, that sort of thing. That was sort of what was cool when I was a teenager. So that's sort of my wheelhouse of music listening for sure. This piece itself, 2,000 Times I've Screamed Before, 2,000 Times I've Screamed, was intended to be originally a mellow piece, and instead it took this turn along with the year 2020 to a more intense and heavy vibe rather than a mellow, relaxing vibe that I had initially thought the piece would transform into. So I'm really happy to present this piece as sort of a catharsis of my internal screams, my internal repetitious ideas and my internal screams from 2020 being released into this piece. And I hope you can release a lot of your stress and anxiety and your repetitive thoughts as well as we move forward and try and produce something creative and fun in the future.
The next piece is from Alex Ring-Gray, and it's called Resonator. Alex, listening to this piece, I really like the difference between, you talk about in your program note, the difference between this groove underneath and then these sort of, resonant lines that you mentioned in the title of the program. And I'm curious how in all of your music do those two things interact, this idea of overarching long melodies and underpinning grooves?
Hey, so yeah, in a lot of my music, I use long tones as performed by the ensemble. And what's different in this piece is that I really wanted the ensemble to be playing like fast 16th note type grooves on their own and still maintain a drone, but instead drone is like a result of the performance technique. So the piano, for instance, is always sustaining. The guitarist uses a lot of reverb and uses a resonator on their guitar. The saxophonist is playing in a way that like brings out the resonance of their instrument. So you get this overlaying drone on top of what is otherwise like this post-minimalist kind of groove. So yeah.
And the next piece on the concert is by Yaz Lancaster and is entitled Badhead. Yaz, I noticed you use banjo. Why?
The short answer to that is I was actually over at Jay and Andrea's place in New York around this time last year, a little bit earlier. Actually, no, it was around this time last year. And I saw that Jay had a banjo, and I asked if he would be down to play some in the Hypercube piece that I was working on, and he said yeah. So that's like the short answer. But the more of like the why it ended up working in this piece, the piece is sort of inspired by, or like came out of me dealing with insomnia. And I wrote it after not sleeping for like a full 24 hours. And I was looking for sounds that sounded like very familiar, or something that you wouldn't expect to hear, but also just like works. And I feel like the banjo is such like a weird instrument when you put it in different contexts, but like on its own or like in its own style of music, it just works. So that's how it ended up in this piece.
Up next, we have Evan O. Adams with his piece, Genre is a Technique. Evan, I wanted to ask you that question because this is kind of your manifesto as an artist. So is it a strong motion for you to make that the title of this one work? Is this piece your manifesto?
No. I mean, kind of. I think genre is malleable, and I think especially now with the plethora of music that's available to us, it's very easy to listen to very extremely different things within the span of 10 minutes. And since we listened to that already in the form of different works, to me, it makes sense in a way to use that same difference of genre within a single work, and using that differences as like ways of delineating form or ways of building, releasing tension, and doing all the normal boring stuff that composers think about when we write stuff, and using genre as part of that. So yeah, and the piece is called Genre is a Technique, and it's called that because I think genre is a technique.
our final piece tonight is by Michael O'Callaghan, Shiver, Shimmer, Shatter. So Michael, my question for you is this piece, there's these three separate titles. Is the piece separated into three parts? I know you mentioned that you had the sort of same chords that you used in the piece itself, but you said that there's certain different concepts based on shiver, shimmer, and shatter. So what are some of the things that people could listen to define those different ideas?
So I wouldn't say that the piece is structured in three separate sections, but I think that I use the words as different ways to think about spinning out ideas. And I toyed with doing that idea where it would literally be one way of thinking about it, another way, and another way. And that led me to sort of rearrange things a lot. I couldn't, and then the title kept changing. It like would be shiver, shatter, shimmer, or like, different permutations of that. But eventually it sort of just became about this way that I was trying to think about the colors that these words evoked and the ways that I could get different sort of textures out of the ensemble that were all related to the same harmonic ideas. And still, I definitely am trying to explore different textures, but they all sort of live in the same world.
And with that, our program has come to an end. Before we go, we want to give a big thank you to Hypercube for playing our music. Thank you to Nevermind the Noise for letting us use your platform, even though most of us are alumni at this point. Thank you to the NYU composition faculty for teaching us things. Thank you to YouTube for existing. Thanks to NYU's GSO and the Steinhardt Department for helping us fund this project. And finally, thank you to you, the audience, for being here with us. Please follow all the relevant parties on their social medias, which are listed in the description, so you stay up to date with when stuff happens that we're involved with. Enjoy your day, and goodbye.
Nevermind.
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 Nevermind the noise.
Nevermind the noise.
The noise.
Nevermind the noise.